Hi, it's Kevin Lebates here, and today I thought I would start a series on financial regulation and cryptocurrencies because let's face it, is there anything more interesting on the planet than financial regulation? I think not. And to start with, I'll introduce a couple of terms because the regulatory world doesn't use terms like cryptocurrency. They use the term virtual asset in order to describe crypto and tokens and things like that. And similarly, they don't talk about cryptocurrency exchanges or custodial wallet services. They talk about virtual asset service providers, or VASPs. And the reason why regulation has become more and more of interest is because a lot of regulatory law is on the way to being implemented and enforced. And this is shaking up the VASPs because up until recently they've been able to operate fairly freely as and how they saw fit. So financial regulation, well, it's got a couple of very serious purposes. One is to reduce or remove money laundering activity, and the other one is to stop the funding of terrorism. So two worthy goals. And financial regulation has been in place for decades in order to do something about these two nefarious activities. So, for example, the Bank Secrecy Act in the US was amended in order to enforce something called the travel rule. It came in force in 1996, and the idea of the travel rule is that when you make a financial transaction between two financial institutions, the sender has to provide data about the origins of the funds to the receiver, so that if there is a suspicion of illegal activity later on, the chain of transactions can be audited, and hopefully the criminals, if they turn out to be criminals, can be identified and prosecuted. And the thing that is now shaking up the VASP world is that those kind of regulations are going to be enforced on them. So just a little bit of history behind this. There's an organization called the Financial Action Task Force, and they provide recommendations, and then national governments are meant to implement them in law in order to be in line with the required standards for financial compliance. And the headache that is currently being caused for VASPs is that the FATF just publishes recommendations. They say what needs to be achieved, but they don't say how to do it. They refuse to provide standards or give instructions on exactly what needs to be done. And so if you look, for example, at Europe, then you have the European Union and the European Commission, who then pass directives, which are instructions to all the member states as to what they need to have achieved by a certain date. So when it comes to money laundering, for example, there's the anti-money laundering directive. It's currently at number 5. Number 6 is coming in force in December, and it says a few things here and there about cryptocurrencies too. However, exactly 22 member states are currently actually being prosecuted for failing to implement directive number 5, and presumably the same thing will be the case for number 6. Interestingly, Finland is not on the list. However, anti-money laundering regulation doesn't mean that it's guaranteed that there won't be any financial irregularities. For example, Swedbank and Danske Bank were found to have aided in the laundering of over $200 billion back in 2018. So it's not a panacea. And if Scandinavian countries, with their penchant for regulation and auditing, can't keep money laundering under control, well, then there's not really much hope for the rest of us, is there? But back to the VASP headache. So they're in a situation where they need to implement technical solutions that comply with the FATF recommendations and actually comply with the EU directive and the laws that their countries have brought in. Unfortunately, those laws haven't been passed yet. They're still at the draft stage. So how do you comply with something that hasn't fully been specified? Well, I guess you need to take a belt and braces approach and just try and make sure that you achieve everything. And in the next video, I'm going to look in particular at this travel rule that I talked about and the issues that VASPs face in making sure that they comply with it. I hope you're finding this interesting, and I'll see you in the next video soon. Bye for now.